Rudolf Huss, not to be confused with Rudolf Hess, was the long-standing commandant of the infamous death camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau. Born into a Catholic family, he left the Catholic Church disgruntled and became enamored with the fascists, and in particular with Himmler. And so he joined the SS, and he was given the task of going to Auschwitz in order to make this death camp an efficient place of death and torture, and that's what he did. Now, in around about 1944, the Jesuit community in Krakow were all arrested, apart from the superior, Father Władysław Lorn, who was out on business at the time and returned to find his community gone. How Father Władysław got into the camp at Auschwitz is a miracle. He went there in search of his brethren, he found them, and in discovering them, so too he was discovered. Everyone thought they knew what was going to happen. He was taken to Rudolf Huss, and they thought he would be immediately killed. But to their amazement, Huss let Father Władysław go. Now, just towards the end of the Second World War, Rudolf Huss was transferred back to Germany, and after the war he went back into hiding. But he was found and was put on trial. His crime: he'd been responsible for the murder of 3 million inhabitants of Auschwitz, and only once in his long trial did he break his silence in order to correct the judge. "I didn't kill 3 million people," he said. "I killed 2.5 million people. The other 500,000 died of disease. I was not responsible for that." He was found guilty and was punished, and his punishment was to go back to Auschwitz, where he would be executed in the place that he had made. In prison, he wrote to his family. He said he wasn't so much worried about death. That didn't concern him at all. What really concerned him was that he would be tortured by the Polish and the British troops who were guarding him. So he was amazed, astounded by their behavior, because they treated him with kindness. They treated him with respect, and he could hear them praying and singing, and this worked upon his hard soul. 4 days before he was executed, he wrote to his family, "My conscience compels me to make the following declaration. In the solitude of my prison cell, I have come to the bitter recognition that I have sinned gravely against humanity. As commandant of Auschwitz, I was responsible for carrying out part of the cruel plans of the final solution, and in doing so I have inflicted terrible wounds on humanity. I have caused unspeakable suffering for the Polish people in particular. I pray with all my heart, may the Lord God forgive one day what I have done." April the 4th, 1947, was Good Friday that year, and the Polish soldiers had worked their magic, their spell of love upon this hard soul, and he asked if a priest could be found. Not one priest would come. They searched and searched, but every priest they turned to said they would not come and speak with this beast of Auschwitz, as he was called. And then Rudolf Huss remembered the name of Father Władysław Lorn, who spoke German, though he was Polish. Could this priest be found? Well, there are no coincidences in God's plan. And where was Father Władysław? He was 30 kilometers away at the Shrine of Divine Mercy in Krakow as chaplain. And immediately they came to him. He said, "Now I know why I was allowed to live. God spared me for this moment." And so he went for this, back to Auschwitz, and heard the confession of Rudolf Huss. The next day he came back and gave him Holy Communion just before he was executed. And in his memorable words, Father Władysław said, "In all my years as a priest, I have given communion to thousands of people, but I have never given the Blessed Sacrament to anyone who had such devotion. I have no doubt that Rudolf Huss is in heaven, and I pray for those priests who refused to give him the supreme gift of God's mercy." Why am I telling this story? Well, what we have begun in Holy Week is no empty ritual that we wake up to suddenly. Today, every day, you and I encounter that powerful story of our redemption, the supreme gift of God's mercy. The God that we worship is not a remote God, but he enters into the concrete world of our lives. I love that description in William Young's book, The Shack, the story of tragic loss of a man caught up in darkness. And God, who is depicted as a black American woman, God turns to this man and says, you know, when we made Adam and Eve, we knew that they'd messed things up. So we rolled up our sleeves and came down into the mess. That's the incarnation. That's why this is the Great Week.